Step into the opulent Velvet Theatre, London, 1932, where the premiere of The Lady in Scarlet turns deadly. A scream pierces the darkness, and Sir Reginald Vane, a wealthy financier, is found stabbed with a theatrical dagger. Hercule Poirot, the master detective, unravels a web of secrets among a glamorous cast, a desperate playwright, a defiant actress, a vengeful rival, a stoic widow, and a frightened usherette. As motives of greed, betrayal, and revenge unfold, Poirot's little gray cells reveal a cunning killer hiding behind the curtain of deceit. Will he unmask the murderer before the final act? The stage is set for a mystery, where every clue is a performance. Chapter 1. The Curtain Rises. The Velvet Theatre, nestled in the heart of London's West End, stood as a monument to opulence on that chilly October evening in 1932. Its facade, adorned with carved cherubs and gilded cornices, glowed under the soft gaslight, beckoning the city's elite to the premiere of The Lady in Scarlet, a new play by the reclusive Julian Warrender. Inside, the auditorium hummed with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of polished wood, velvet upholstery, and the faint perfume of the well-heeled audience. Chandeliers cast a warm, golden light over rows of expectant faces, lords and ladies, theater critics with sharpened pencils, and society figures eager for a night of drama. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed in a tailored evening suit, occupied a private box to the left of the stage, his patent leather shoes gleaming as brightly as his keen eyes. Beside him sat Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend, whose ruddy cheeks betrayed his excitement for the evening. Poirot, however, seemed more absorbed in the audience than in the promise of the play. His small, neat hands rested on the velvet railing, and his mustache, meticulously waxed, gave the faintest quiver as he surveyed the crowd below. "Hastings, mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low and precise. "Observe the theatre. It is not merely a place of art, but a stage for the passions of humanity, greed, love, betrayal. Tonight, I feel it in the air, a certain disquiet." Hastings, adjusting his tie, chuckled softly. "You're imagining things, Poirot. It's just a play. Everyone's here to enjoy themselves. Look, there's Sir Reginald Vane in the front row. Quite the bigwig, they say. And that must be his wife, Lady Margaret, beside him. Stunning, isn't she?" Poirot's green eyes followed Hastings' gaze to the stalls, where Sir Reginald Vane, a financier of considerable wealth and questionable charm, sat with an air of self-importance. His heavy jowls and florid complexion contrasted sharply with the poised elegance of Lady Margaret, whose dark hair was swept up beneath a diamond tiara. Her expression, Poirot noted, was one of studied indifference, her gloved hands folded tightly in her lap. "Oui, Hastings," Poirot murmured. "But the eyes, they tell a story the face does. Not Lady Margaret. She is not at ease." The orchestra struck up a lively overture, and the crimson curtains parted to reveal a sumptuous set, a drawing room bathed in scarlet hues. The play began, and Clara Beaumont, the leading lady, swept onto the stage, her presence commanding every eye. Her voice, rich and melodic, carried the opening lines with effortless grace, yet Poirot's attention wandered. He noted the restless fidgeting of a man in the third row, Victor Crane, a known rival of Sir Reginald. He observed the nervous glances of a young usherette, Elsie Gray, stationed near the aisle, her face pale beneath her modest cap. And he saw Julian Warrender himself, half hidden in the wings, his thin frame taut with tension. The first act was nearing its climax when a sharp, piercing scream shattered the spell of the performance. The audience gasped, heads turning as the house lights flickered and surged. Clara Beaumont faltered mid-line, and the actors froze. In the front row of the stalls, Sir Reginald Vane slumped forward, his body crumpling against the armrest. A dark stain spread across his white shirt front, and the glint of an ornate dagger, its handle carved with theatrical flourishes, protruded from his chest. "Good heavens!" Hastings exclaimed, leaping to his feet. "Poirot, it's murder!" Poirot was already moving, his small frame surprisingly agile as he descended from the box, Hastings hurrying behind. The auditorium erupted into chaos. Women shrieked, men shouted for order, and ushers struggled to maintain calm. Poirot reached the body as an usher attempted to cordon off the area. He knelt beside Sir Reginald, his gloved fingers hovering over the dagger without touching it. The financier's eyes were wide, frozen in a moment of shock, and a thin trickle of blood marred the velvet seat beneath him. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, his voice steady despite the pandemonium. "This is no accident. The dagger, it is not a prop. It is real, and its placement is precise. This murder, Hastings, it is a performance in itself." The theater manager, a flustered man named Mr. Harrow, wrung his hands nearby. "This is ruinous, a murder in my theater. The police must be called at once." "They are already on their way, no doubt," Poirot said, rising to his feet. His eyes swept the crowd, noting the ashen face of Lady Margaret, who stood a few paces away, her composure intact, but her eyes betraying a flicker of something. Fear, perhaps, or calculation. Clara Beaumont, still in her scarlet costume, hovered near the stage, her expression unreadable. Julian Warrender emerged from the wings, his hands trembling as he clutched a crumpled program. Victor Crane stood apart, his jaw tight, while Elsie Gray lingered at the edge of the scene, her eyes darting nervously. "Hastings," Poirot said softly. "Mark well these faces. Among them is our murderer, and the little gray cells, they are already at work." As the distant wail of police sirens grew louder, Poirot's gaze lingered on the dagger, its intricate handle catching the light. "A weapon chosen with care," he mused. "The stage is set, and the drama, it has only just begun." Chapter 2. The Cast of Suspects. The Velvet Theater's grand foyer, usually a haven of gilded mirrors and murmured pleasantries, had transformed into a stage of suspicion. The chandeliers above cast a harsh glow on the assembled crowd, their faces a tapestry of shock, curiosity, and veiled unease. Hercule Poirot stood near the grand staircase, his small, immaculate figure a calm center amid the storm. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, darted from one figure to another, cataloging gestures, glances, and the subtle tremors of guilt that betrayed the innocent facade. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, hovered at his side, his notebook open, though his pencil remained idle, overwhelmed by the scene. "Poirot," Hastings whispered, "this is a devil of a mess. Half of London's high society is here, and any one of them could have done it." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing beneath it. "Non, mon ami, not half of London, but a select few. Murder, it is a precise art, and our artist is among those gathered here. Observe and let the little gray cells do their work." The police, led by the familiar figure of Inspector Japp, had cordoned off the auditorium, and officers were ushering stragglers from the stalls to the foyer. Japp, his hat slightly askew, spotted Poirot and groaned audibly. Good Lord, Poirot, you're like a bad penny, always turning up where there's trouble. Can't you enjoy a play without finding a corpse?" "Alas, Inspector," Poirot replied, his voice smooth as polished oak. "The crime, it seeks me out, but fear not, I shall assist you in untangling this knot of villainy." Japp snorted but made no protest, knowing Poirot's uncanny knack for solving the unsolvable. "Right then, victim Sir Reginald Vane, stabbed clean through the heart during the first act. No one saw the act itself. Too dark, too many people moving about during the interval. We've got the dagger, but it's a queer one. Looks like something from a costume drama." Poirot nodded, his mind already turning over the details. The dagger, with its ornate handle carved in the shape of a tragic mask, was no mere prop, despite its theatrical appearance. Its blade was sharp, its purpose deadly. "The choice of weapon," he murmured. "It is significant. It speaks of intent, of a mind that wishes to confuse." The suspects, now gathered in a loose semicircle near the foyer's marble fireplace, were a study in contrasts. Julian Warrender, the playwright, stood apart, his lanky frame hunched as if shielding himself from scrutiny. His dark eyes flickered nervously, and his fingers, stained with ink, clutched a cigarette that trembled slightly. Clara Beaumont, the leading lady, exuded a calculated poise, her scarlet gown from the play replaced by a sleek emerald dress that accentuated her striking beauty. Yet her smile, when she met Poirot's gaze, was too perfect, too practiced. Lady Margaret Vane, the widow, sat on a velvet settee, her black-gloved hands folded with icy precision. Her face, framed by a severe chignon, betrayed no grief, only a glacial calm that Poirot found intriguing. Victor Crane, the rival financier, paced near a column, his broad shoulders tense, his jaw set in a scowl. His eyes, when they met Poirot's, held a challenge, as if daring the detective to accuse him. Lastly, Elsie Gray, the young usherette, lingered at the edge of the group, her plain uniform a stark contrast to the opulence around her. Her hands twisted in her apron, and her gaze darted to the floor whenever anyone spoke. Poirot approached Julian Warrender first, his manner courteous but unyielding. "Monsieur Warrender, a tragedy has marred your premiere. Tell me, did you know Sir Reginald well?" Warrender's cigarette paused mid-air. "He was a patron of the arts," he said, his voice clipped. "He invested in my play. A generous man, but demanding." "Demanding how?" Poirot pressed, his head tilted like a bird studying its prey. Warrender hesitated, his eyes flicking to Lady Margaret. "He had opinions about the production, casting, direction, everything, but I had no reason to harm him. His money kept this theater alive." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "And yet, monsieur, a man with such influence often makes enemies. Perhaps you resented his control." Warrender's face flushed. "I'm a writer, not a murderer." Poirot turned to Clara Beaumont, who met his scrutiny with a raised brow. "Mademoiselle, you were magnificent on stage, yet I sense a performance continues off it. Sir Reginald, he admired you greatly, no?" Clara's laugh was light, but her eyes were guarded. "He was a fan, Monsieur Poirot. Many men are. He wanted me for some film project, but I'm a creature of the stage, not the screen. We had words about it, nothing more." "Words can wound as deeply as daggers," Poirot remarked, noting the faint tightening of her lips. "And you were near the stalls during the interval, were you not?" "I was backstage," she said quickly, "preparing for the second act." Poirot nodded, filing away her response. He moved to Lady Margaret, whose composure remained unbroken. "Madame, my condolences. Your husband's death. It must be a great shock." Lady Margaret's eyes, cold as winter glass, met his. "Reginald lived a dangerous life, Monsieur Poirot. His business dealings made enemies. I am not surprised, only saddened." Poirot noted the pause, the careful choice of words. "You were seated beside him, yet you saw nothing." "The lights were dim," she said. "I was watching the play." Victor Crane, overhearing, interjected with a sneer. "Reginald Vane was a snake, Poirot. He ruined my business 2 years ago with his underhanded deals. If anyone had reason to kill him, it was me, but I didn't. I was in the bar during the interval." "A convenient alibi," Poirot said mildly, "yet one easily disproved if witnesses are lacking." Crane's face darkened, but he said nothing more. Poirot's attention shifted to Elsie Gray, who shrank under his gaze. "Mademoiselle Gray, you were near the stalls, guiding patrons. Did you see anyone approach Sir Reginald?" Elsie's voice was barely a whisper. "No, sir. It was so busy, people coming and going. I didn't notice anything." "Odd." Poirot's eyes softened, sensing her fear. "You are certain? Even a small detail, it may be the key." She shook her head, tears welling. "I swear, I saw nothing." As Poirot stepped back, Japp approached, his notebook bristling with scribbles. "Well, Poirot, what's your take? We've got no clear witnesses, and the interval was a madhouse. Anyone could have slipped that dagger in." "Précisément," Poirot said, his voice low. "The chaos, it was the murderer's curtain. But the dagger, Inspector, it is no random choice. It belongs to this theater, to its history. We must learn its story." Hastings, scribbling furiously now, looked up. "You think the dagger's the key, Poirot?" "Oui, Hastings. It is a symbol, a clue left to taunt or to mislead. The murderer, they wish to direct our attention, but Hercule Poirot, he sees beyond the stage." As the suspects dispersed under police supervision, Poirot lingered, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The foyer, now emptying, seemed to whisper secrets in its shadows. The little gray cells, as he called them, were already piecing together the puzzle. Motive, opportunity, and the delicate threads of human nature that bound this cast of suspects to a single, deadly act. Chapter 3. Whispers in the Wings. The backstage of the Velvet Theater was a labyrinth of shadows and secrets, a world where illusion reigned supreme. Narrow corridors, lined with ropes and pulleys, led to cluttered prop rooms and dressing areas, the air heavy with the scent of sawdust, grease paint, and old velvet. Hercule Poirot navigated this maze with the precision of a cat, his polished shoes clicking softly on the worn floorboards. Captain Hastings followed, his eyes wide as he took in the chaotic underbelly of the theater, so different from the polished grandeur of the auditorium. "Poirot," Hastings said, ducking under a low-hanging sandbag. "This place is a warren. How do you expect to find anything useful here?" Poirot's mustache curved in a faint smile. "Mon ami, it is in the shadows that truth hides. The stage shows us what the actors wish us to see, but backstage, here, we see what they wish to conceal." Their destination was the prop room, a cluttered space where shelves groaned under the weight of candelabras, plaster busts, and faded costumes. Julian Warrender, the playwright, stood near a rack of swords, his thin frame silhouetted against a flickering gas lamp. His face, already pale, seemed to blanch further as Poirot approached, his fingers fidgeting with a loose thread on his cuff. "Monsieur Warrender," Poirot began, his voice smooth but with an edge of steel. "You have been most reticent about your connection to Sir Reginald Vane, yet I sense there is more to your story. This dagger, so curiously chosen for murder, does it not belong to your theatre?" Warrender's eyes darted to a wooden trunk in the corner, its lock rusted but intact. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I don't know where it came from. The Velvet Theatre has hundreds of props. That dagger could be from any old production." Poirot's gaze followed Warrender's, noting the trunk's prominence in the cramped room. "And yet, monsieur, your eyes betray you. That trunk, it holds something of interest, non?" Warrender stiffened, then forced a laugh. "Just old scripts and costumes. Nothing to do with this tragedy." With a nod to Hastings, who stood ready to assist, Poirot approached the trunk. "If it is nothing, then you will not object to its inspection." His tone left no room for refusal. Warrender hesitated, then produced a key with trembling hands, unlocking the trunk with a reluctant twist. Inside lay a jumble of papers, moth-eaten shawls, and a leather-bound notebook, its pages yellowed. Poirot lifted the notebook, flipping it open to reveal dense handwriting. Dialogue drafts for the Lady in Scarlet, interspersed with columns of numbers. Debts, Poirot noted, in amounts that suggested desperation. One entry, dated a month prior, listed a sum owed to R.V., Sir Reginald Vane. "These figures," Poirot said, holding the notebook aloft, "they tell a tale of obligation. Sir Reginald was not merely your patron, but your creditor. A man in such debt might find murder a convenient solution. Non?" Warrender's face crumpled, his voice rising in protest. "I didn't kill him. Yes, I owed him money, half the theatre did. He bankrolled the production, but he was squeezing me dry, demanding changes to the script, threatening to pull his funding. But I needed him alive, Monsieur Poirot. Without him, the play might never have opened." Poirot's eyes narrowed, studying the playwright's agitation. "And yet, the play opened, and Sir Reginald is dead. A coincidence, perhaps, but Hercule Poirot does not believe in coincidences." Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, whispered, "He's sweating buckets, Poirot. Think he's our man?" "Not yet, Hastings," Poirot replied softly. "The little gray cells, they require more pieces of the puzzle." Leaving Warrender to his nervous pacing, Poirot led Hastings to a narrow staircase that descended to the theatre's understage, a dimly lit space where trapdoors and machinery facilitated the play's illusions. Here, they encountered Mr. Harrow. The theatre manager, a rotund man with a perpetually anxious expression. He was supervising two stagehands as they adjusted a creaking pulley system, but he paused to greet Poirot, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "Monsieur Harrow," Poirot said, "this theatre, it is a place of secrets. Tell me, who had access to the props, particularly that dagger?" Harrow's eyes widened. "Anyone, really. Actors, stagehands, even patrons sometimes wander backstage during rehearsals. That dagger? It's old, from a production of Macbeth years ago. I thought it was locked away, but—" He trailed off, his face a picture of dismay. "Locked away, yet found in Sir Reginald's heart," Poirot mused. "And during the interval, was the backstage area secure?" Harrow shook his head. "It was chaos, Monsieur Poirot. Patrons milling about, actors changing, stagehands moving scenery. Anyone could have slipped in and out." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging the possibilities. As they ascended to the main backstage area, he paused by a bulletin board covered in notices, rehearsal schedules, costume fittings, and a faded poster for The Lady in Scarlet. Tucked behind it was a crumpled letter, its edges singed as if someone had tried to burn it. Poirot unfolded it carefully, revealing a scrawled message. "Meet me at the interval. We must settle this. R.V." "Hastings," Poirot said, holding up the letter. "This is no mere prop. It is a clue, a whisper from the victim himself. Sir Reginald arranged a meeting, but with whom?" Hastings frowned. "Could be any of them. Warrender, Clara, even Lady Margaret, or that Crane fellow. He's got a temper." "Précisément," Poirot said, folding the letter into his pocket. "The question is not only who, but why. The motive, it lies in the heart of this theater, in its rivalries and resentments." As they emerged into the corridor, Poirot's attention was drawn to a faint sound, a muffled sob from behind a closed door marked "Costumes." He knocked gently, and the door creaked open to reveal Elsie Gray, the usherette, her face streaked with tears. She clutched a broom as if seeking comfort in its familiarity. "Mademoiselle Gray," Poirot said kindly, "you are distressed. Is it the shock of the murder or something more?" Elsie's eyes widened, and she shook her head. "It's nothing, sir, just the awfulness of it all." Poirot's gaze was gentle but piercing. "You were near the stalls during the interval, no? Perhaps you saw someone who should not have been there?" "I don't know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It was so dark, so crowded. I was just doing my job." Poirot nodded, sensing her fear was genuine but incomplete. "Do not be afraid, mademoiselle. The truth, it will protect you." As they left Elsie to her tears, Hastings muttered, "She knows something, Poirot. Why won't she talk?" "Because, mon ami," Poirot replied, "she is afraid, not only of the murderer, but of what her truth might reveal. The backstage, it is a mirror of the soul, and we have only begun to see its reflections." The gas lamps flickered, casting long shadows across the corridor. Poirot's mind, alive with the hum of his little gray cells, turned over the clues: the dagger, the debts, the letter, and the frightened girl. The murderer, he knew, was close, hidden among the props and pretenses of the Velvet Theater. Chapter 4. The Leading Lady's Mask. The dressing room of Clara Beaumont, star of The Lady in Scarlet, was a shrine to her own radiance. A large mirror, framed in gilded roses, reflected a cascade of silk scarves, vases of fresh lilies, and photographs of Clara in various roles, each capturing her magnetic allure. The air carried the feigned sweetness of her perfume, mingling with the sharper tang of cold cream. Hercule Poirot stood just inside the doorway, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes taking in every detail with the precision of a jeweler examining a flawed gem. Captain Hastings, at his side, shifted uncomfortably, overwhelmed by the room's opulence and the presence of the actress herself, who reclined on a chaise longue, her emerald dress catching the lamplight. "Mademoiselle Beaumont?" Poirot began, his voice as smooth as velvet yet carrying a quiet authority. "You have played your part on stage with great skill, but here, in this room, I seek the truth behind the performance." Clara's lips curved into a smile that was both charming and guarded, her dark eyes meeting Poirot's without flinching. "Monsieur Poirot, I'm an actress, not a magician. I have no secrets to reveal. Sir Reginald's death is a tragedy, but I'm as baffled as anyone." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache quivering slightly as he studied her. Baffled, perhaps, but not uninvolved. I have heard, mademoiselle, of a disagreement with Sir Reginald, a matter of a film contract, non? One you refused, and he did not take kindly to your refusal. Clara's smile faltered, a fleeting crack in her composure. She rose gracefully, crossing to her dressing table, where she adjusted a silver hairbrush with deliberate care. "You've been listening to gossip, monsieur." "Yes, Reginald wanted me for some dreary film venture, a cheap melodrama, not my style. I told him I belonged to the theater. He was persistent, but I didn't kill him over it." Poirot's eyes narrowed, catching the slight tremor in her fingers as she touched the brush. "Persistence, it can be tiresome, mademoiselle. And Sir Reginald, he was a man of influence. Perhaps his insistence threatened more than your artistic preferences." Clara turned, her expression cool, but her eyes sharp. "What are you implying? That I stabbed him because he annoyed me? I'm not so fragile, Monsieur Poirot. Men like Reginald come and go in this business. I know how to handle them." "Indeed," Poirot said, stepping closer to the dressing table. His gaze fell on a small, locked box tucked among her cosmetics, its brass clasp gleaming. "And this box, mademoiselle? It holds treasures, perhaps? Or secrets?" Clara's hand moved instinctively toward the box, then paused. "Just trinkets," she said lightly. "Jewelry, letters from admirers, nothing of interest to a detective." Poirot's smile was polite, but unyielding. "If it is nothing, then you will permit me to see?" For a moment, Clara hesitated, her poise wavering like a candle flame in a draught. Then, with a shrug, she unlocked the box and lifted the lid. Inside lay a jumble of earrings, a pearl necklace, and a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. Poirot's gloved fingers lifted one letter, its envelope bearing the initials R.V., in a bold, masculine hand. "A memento from Sir Reginald?" Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. Clara's cheeks flushed, but her voice remained steady. "He wrote to me often, flattering mostly. He fancied himself a patron of the arts and of me. I kept them for amusement, nothing more." Poirot unfolded the letter, scanning its contents. It was effusive, praising Clara's talent, but the final lines carried a sharper tone. "You will regret refusing me, Clara. My influence is not so easily dismissed." He folded the letter and returned it to the box, his expression unreadable. "Regret, mademoiselle," Poirot said. "It is a powerful motive. And you were near the stalls during the interval, were you not? A moment's opportunity, a dagger at hand." Clara laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think I carried a dagger in my costume? I was backstage, preparing for my next scene. Ask the stage manager. He saw me." Poirot nodded, filing away her alibi for verification. "The stage manager, he will be consulted. But tell me, mademoiselle, this dagger, it is familiar to you, no? A relic from an earlier role, perhaps?" Clara's eyes flickered, but she shook her head. "I've played many parts, Monsieur Poirot. I don't keep track of every prop." As Poirot and Hastings left the dressing room, Hastings whispered, "She's slippery, Poirot. That letter sounds like Sir Reginald was threatening her. Do you think she's lying?" "Oui, Hastings," Poirot replied, his voice low. "She lies, but not about everything. The letter, it reveals a man who sought control. And Clara Beaumont, she is not a woman to be controlled. Yet the dagger, it is a piece of the puzzle that does not yet fit." They stepped into the corridor, where the hum of the theater's machinery was a faint pulse in the background. Poirot paused by a framed poster of Clara in a production of Macbeth, her face fierce as Lady Macbeth, a dagger raised in her hand. The image stirred a memory in Poirot's mind. The ornate handle of the murder weapon, carved with a tragic mask, was identical to the one in the poster. "Hastings," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "The little gray cells, they begin to dance. This dagger, it is no mere prop chosen at random. It is a message, a link to the past." Hastings frowned, glancing at the poster. "You think Clara kept it from that old play? But why use it to kill Sir Reginald?" "Perhaps to point the finger elsewhere," Poirot mused. "Or perhaps to settle a score in a way that speaks of the theatre itself. We must learn more of Mademoiselle Beaumont's history with this dagger, and with Sir Reginald." As they made their way back to the foyer, Poirot's mind churned with possibilities. Clara's poise, her guarded answers, and the threatening letter suggested a woman under pressure. But was it enough to drive her to murder? The dagger's theatrical origins hinted at a deeper connection to the Velvet Theatre, one that tied the suspects together in a web of ambition and betrayal. "Poirot," Hastings said, breaking the silence. "You're awfully quiet. What's brewing in that head of yours?" "The truth, mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice soft but resolute. "It hides behind the mask of performance, but Hercule Poirot, he will unmask it. The leading lady, she plays her part well, but the script of murder, it is written in clues we have yet to fully read." The corridor stretched ahead, its shadows deepening as the theater settled into an uneasy quiet. The next act of the investigation awaited, and Poirot knew the stage was set for further revelations. Chapter 5: Shadows of Vengeance. The Mayfair residence of Lady Margaret Vane stood as a testament to wealth and restraint, its Georgian facade imposing under the grey drizzle of the London morning. Inside, the drawing room was a study in elegance, marble fireplace, silk draperies, and a grand piano polished to a mirror-like sheen. Hercule Poirot sat in a high-backed chair, his small frame dwarfed by the room's grandeur, yet his presence commanded attention. Captain Hastings stood near a window, peering out at the rain-slicked street, his restlessness a counterpoint to Poirot's serene composure. Lady Margaret, seated opposite Poirot, was a vision of controlled dignity. Her morning attire, a tailored black dress, was offset by a single pearl brooch, and her dark hair was swept into a severe knot. Her hands, gloved in black silk, rested motionless in her lap, betraying no hint of the turmoil one might expect from a newly widowed woman. Poirot's green eyes studied her, noting the faintest tightening of her jaw as he began to speak. "Madame Vine," Poirot said, his voice measured and courteous. "The loss of your husband, it is a tragedy most profound. Yet I observe in you a composure remarkable. Permit me to ask, were you and Sir Reginald content in your marriage?" Lady Margaret's gaze met his, cool and unflinching. "Reginald was a man of ambition, Monsieur Poirot. Our marriage was one of mutual respect, if not always harmony. His business dealings often kept him from home, but I accepted that as the price of his success." Poirot tilted his head, his moustache giving a slight quiver. "Respect, oui, but perhaps not affection? There are whispers, madame, of Sir Reginald's indiscretions. A man of his stature, he attracted attention. None? A flicker of something, Anger, perhaps, or pain crossed Lady Margaret's face, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "My husband was a public figure," she said evenly. "People talked as they always do. I paid no heed to gossip." Poirot leaned forward slightly, his tone gentle but probing. "And yet, madame, gossip can point to truth. I have learned that Sir Reginald was seen with a young woman, an usherette at the Velvet Theatre. Elsie Grey, I believe. Did this knowledge reach you?" Lady Margaret's lips thinned, but her voice remained steady. "If you mean to suggest I was jealous, Monsieur Poirot, you are mistaken. Reginald's attentions to others were fleeting and meaningless. I had no cause to resent him." Poirot's eyes drifted to the mantel, where a collection of framed photographs stood in neat rows. One caught his attention, a faded image of a younger Lady Margaret, smiling radiantly beside a man who was unmistakably Julian Warrender, his arm around her shoulders. The backdrop was a seaside pier, the sun bright and carefree. Poirot rose and approached the photograph, his gloved finger hovering near its edge. "This image, madame," he said, "it tells a story of happier times. You and Monsieur Warrender, you were close once, no?" Lady Margaret's composure wavered, her fingers tightening briefly on her gloves. "A youthful acquaintance," she said, her voice clipped. "Julian was an aspiring writer then, full of dreams. We lost touch when I married Reginald. And yet," Poirot continued, "he is now the playwright of The Lady in Scarlet, a play your husband financed. A curious coincidence, is it not, that your past and present converge in the Velvet Theatre?" Lady Margaret rose, her movements graceful but deliberate, as if to reclaim control of the conversation. "Coincidences happen, Monsieur Poirot. Julian's talent brought him success, and Reginald saw an opportunity to invest. There is nothing more to it." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Perhaps, but the heart, madame, it does not always forget. And Sir Reginald's death, it benefits many, perhaps even you." Her eyes flashed, a rare crack in her facade. "You accuse me of murder? I was seated beside him when he died, Monsieur Poirot. I saw nothing, heard nothing. The theatre was dark, the audience restless. If you seek a killer, look to Victor Crane. He despised Reginald for ruining his business." Poirot's smile was polite but enigmatic. "Monsieur Crane, he is indeed a man of passion, but passion alone does not a murderer make. The dagger, madame, it was no ordinary weapon. Its theatrical design suggests a connection to the Velvet Theatre, to its players and its past. Did you ever see such a dagger in your husband's possession?" Lady Margaret shook her head, her expression firm. "Never. Reginald had no interest in theatrical relics. He was a man of numbers, not sentiment." As Poirot and Hastings prepared to leave, Poirot paused at the door, turning back to Lady Margaret. "One final question, madame. During the interval, you remained in your seat, oui? Yet the usherette, Elsie Grey, recalls seeing you move toward the aisle, as if to speak with someone." Lady Margaret's face paled, but her voice held steady. "Elsie Grey is mistaken. I stayed in my seat, watching the crowd. Grief affects memory, Monsieur Poirot. Perhaps the girl is confused." Outside, as the rain pattered against their umbrellas, Hastings turned to Poirot, his brow furrowed. "She's hiding something, Poirot. That photograph with Warrender. It's no coincidence, is it?" "Non, Hastings," Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming with quiet intensity. "The past, it casts long shadows. Lady Margaret's composure, it is a mask, and behind it lies a truth she guards fiercely. Was it jealousy, pride, or something deeper that drove the dagger into Sir Reginald's heart? The little grey cells, they are not yet certain. They stepped into a waiting taxi, the grey London streets blurring past. Poirot's mind turned over the clues, the photograph linking Lady Margaret to Warrender, her denial of Sir Reginald's indiscretions, and her questionable alibi during the interval. The dagger, with its theatrical flourish, remained the key, a symbol of a crime woven into the fabric of the Velvet Theatre's history. "Hastings," Poirot said, breaking the silence, "we must return to the theatre. The shadows of vengeance, they linger in its wings, and I suspect they will reveal more of this drama's players." The taxi rolled on, carrying them back to the heart of the mystery, where the stage awaited its next revelation. Chapter 6. The Usherette's Burden. The Velvet Theatre, now shrouded in the gloom of late afternoon, seemed to hold its breath as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings descended the narrow stairs to the basement. The air was damp, heavy with the musty scent of old stone and forgotten props, and the faint clatter of machinery echoed from above. Poirot's polished shoes tapped a steady rhythm on the worn steps, his small frame moving with purpose, while Hastings trailed behind, his expression a mix of curiosity and unease. "Poirot," Hastings said, glancing at the flickering gas lamps that cast long shadows. "Why are we down here? It's like a crypt. Surely the answers are with the likes of Clara or Lady Margaret, not in this dingy cellar." Poirot's mustache twitched, a glimmer of amusement in his green eyes. "Mon ami, the truth, it often hides in the places least seen. The usherette, Mademoiselle Grey, she is a small player in this drama, yet her fear, it speaks loudly to the little grey cells. We must listen." They found Elsie Grey near a storage alcove, her slight figure bent over a brass rail she was polishing with a rag. Her hands moved mechanically, but her eyes, red-rimmed and darting, betrayed a heart in turmoil. The simple black uniform of an usherette hung loosely on her frame, and her cap sat slightly askew, as if she had forgotten to adjust it. At the sound of Poirot's approach, she started, the rag slipping from her fingers. "Mademoiselle Grey," Poirot said, his voice gentle yet commanding attention, "you are distressed, and I sense it is not merely the shock of Sir Reginald's death. Will you not share your burden with Hercule Poirot?" Elsie's lips trembled, and she clasped her hands tightly, as if to anchor herself. "I don't know anything, sir," she whispered. "I was just doing my job, showing people to their seats, keeping things orderly. I didn't see what happened." Poirot stepped closer, his gaze softening but never wavering. "And yet, mademoiselle, you were near the stalls when the fatal blow was struck. You spoke with Sir Reginald earlier that evening, did you not? A conversation, perhaps, that left you uneasy." Elsie's eyes widened, and she took a step back, her shoulder brushing against a stack of crates. He was kind to me," she stammered. "Gave me a tip, that's all. Said I was a good worker, nothing more." Poirot tilted his head, his voice low and coaxing. "Kindness, it can be a mask, no? A wealthy man, a young girl. Such encounters are not always innocent. Did Sir Reginald make promises, mademoiselle? Promises that carried a price?" A sob escaped Elsie's lips, and she covered her face with her hands. "He said he could help me," she admitted, her voice muffled. "Said he knew people, could get me a part on stage. I've always wanted to act, you see. But then he He wanted things I didn't want to give. I told him no, and he laughed, said I'd change my mind. Hastings, standing by a dusty shelf, clenched his fists, his face darkening. The cad, taking advantage of a girl like that? Poirot raised a hand, silencing Hastings. And this conversation, Mademoiselle Gray, when did it take place? Before the play started, Elsie said, wiping her eyes. In the foyer, near the ticket booth. He was waiting for Lady Margaret, but he saw me and... He stopped to talk. Poirot nodded, his mind turning over the implications. And during the interval, you were in the stalls, oui? Did you see anyone approach Sir Reginald? A figure in the shadows, perhaps, or someone out of place? Elsie shook her head, her voice barely audible. It was so dark, sir. People were moving about, talking, going to the bar. I was near the aisle, but I didn't see anyone near Sir Reginald. I swear it. Poirot's eyes narrowed, sensing the truth in her fear, but also a hesitation, a gap in her story. You are certain, mademoiselle? Even a small detail, it may unlock the mystery. Elsie's gaze dropped to the floor, and her fingers twisted in her apron. There was someone, she said at last, her voice a whisper. I didn't see their face, but I saw a shadow move near the front row, just before the scream. It was quick, like they didn't want to be seen. Poirot's expression sharpened, but his tone remained gentle. A shadow, you say? Man or woman? Tall or short? I couldn't tell, Elsie said, her voice breaking. It was too dark, and I was so busy. I thought it was just someone looking for their seat. Poirot placed a reassuring hand on her arm. You have done well, mademoiselle. Your courage, it aids the truth. Rest now, but know that Hercule Poirot will protect you. As they ascended the stairs, leaving Elsie to her task, Hastings muttered, Poor girl. Sir Reginald sounds like a proper scoundrel. Do you think she's telling us everything? No, Hastings, Poirot replied, his voice low. She tells the truth, but not all of it. Her fear, it is not only of Sir Reginald's advances, but of something, or someone, else. The shadow she saw, it is a clue, vague but vital. We must find who cast it. They emerged into the theater's main corridor, where the hum of activity had quieted, the stage hands and actors dispersed. Poirot paused by a notice board, his eyes catching on a faded playbill for Macbeth, the same production tied to the murder weapon. The image of Clara Beaumont as Lady Macbeth loomed large, her hand gripping a dagger eerily similar to the one that ended Sir Reginald's life. Hastings, Poirot said, his voice tinged with excitement. The little gray cells, they begin to align the pieces. The dagger, the shadow, the usherette's fear. They are threads in a tapestry of deceit. We must now seek the one who wove them together. Hastings frowned, his mind struggling to keep pace. You think Elsie's shadow is our killer? But who could it be? Warrender? Crane? Someone we haven't even considered? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Patience, mon ami. The theater, it is a place of illusion. But the truth, it cannot hide forever. The usherette's burden, it points us closer to the heart of this crime. As they stepped out into the London dusk, the rain having subsided to a faint mist, Poirot's mind churned with possibilities. Elsie's reluctant confession, the shadowy figure, and the theatrical dagger formed a constellation of clues, each pointing to a motive rooted in the Velvet Theater's tangled web of ambition and betrayal. The next act awaited, and Poirot knew the stage was set for a confrontation with the truth. Chapter 7. The Final Act. The auditorium of the Velvet Theater, stripped of its evening glamour, stood silent under the stark glow of a single spotlight. The crimson curtains hung motionless, and the rows of velvet seats, now empty, bore witness to the drama that had unfolded within their embrace. Hercule Poirot stood center stage, his small figure commanding the vast space as if he were the lead in a play of his own design. Captain Hastings stood to one side, his notebook clutched tightly, while Inspector Japp, arms crossed, leaned against a proscenium arch, his expression a mix of skepticism and grudging anticipation. The suspects had been summoned, their faces a gallery of unease as they took their places in the front row. Julian Warrender sat hunched, his ink-stained fingers twisting a handkerchief. Clara Beaumont, her elegance undimmed even in the harsh light, maintained a poised defiance, her eyes occasionally darting to the shadows. Lady Margaret Vane, her black mourning dress a stark contrast to the theater's opulence, sat with rigid dignity, her gloved hands folded. Victor Crane paced at the edge of the group, his broad shoulders tense, his scowl deepening with every glance at Poirot. Elsie Gray, the usherette, hovered at the rear, her pale face half hidden by her cap, as if she longed to vanish into the wings. "Monsieur et Mesdames," Poirot began, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the heavy silence. "We are gathered here, in this theater of illusion, to unmask a truth most grim. The murder of Sir Reginald Vane was no mere crime. It was a performance, staged with care to deceive. But Hercule Poirot, he sees through the artifice and the little gray cells. They have uncovered the script of this tragedy." Japp shifted, his impatience evident. "Get on with it, Poirot. Who's the killer?" Poirot raised a hand, his eyes gleaming with quiet authority. "Patience, Inspector. The truth, it requires a proper denouement. Let us begin with the stage itself, the Velvet Theater, where ambition, pride, and betrayal converge. Sir Reginald Vane, a man of wealth and influence, was struck down by a dagger, its handle carved with a tragic mask, a relic from a production of Macbeth. This choice of weapon, it was no accident. It was a message, a thread woven into the fabric of this crime." He turned to Julian Warrender, whose face paled under the spotlight's glare. "Monsieur Warrender, you were in debt to Sir Reginald, were you not? A debt that threatened to ruin you. His death, it ensured your play would open, your debts erased in the chaos of his demise." Warrender leapt to his feet, his voice shrill. "I told you, I needed him alive. He was my patron. Without him, the theater would have collapsed." Poirot's smile was serene. "Perhaps, monsieur, but the little gray cells, they note your nervousness, your glances at the locked trunk where you hid your debts. Yet I do not believe you struck the blow." Warrender sank back, relief warring with confusion. Poirot's gaze shifted to Clara Beaumont, who met it with a cool, defiant stare. "Mademoiselle Beaumont, you too had reason to resent Sir Reginald. His insistence on a film contract, his threatening letters, they endangered your independence. And the dagger, it was yours, non? A memento from your role as Lady Macbeth, kept in your dressing room." Clara's laugh was sharp, but her fingers tightened on her handbag. "A prop, Monsieur Poirot. I didn't even know it was missing. You can't seriously think I'd risk my career for that man." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Your career, it is your life, mademoiselle. But the dagger, it was taken from your room, a fact you did not mention. a curious omission. He turned to Lady Margaret, whose composure remained a mask of ice. "Madame Vane, your husband's indiscretions wounded your pride. His attentions to young Elsie Grey, they were not unknown to you. And your past with Monsieur Warrender, did it stir old resentments when Sir Reginald financed his play?" Lady Margaret's eyes narrowed, but her voice was steady. "My marriage was my own affair, Monsieur Poirot. I had no need to kill to protect it." Poirot's gaze softened, but his words were precise. "Indeed, madam, your strength, it is admirable. But the heart, it can burn quietly beneath such composure." Finally, he faced Victor Crane, whose scowl had deepened into a snarl. "Monsieur Crane, your hatred for Sir Reginald was no secret. He ruined your business, humiliated you. You were in the theatre during the interval, and you had access to Mademoiselle Beaumont's dressing room, where you saw the dagger. An opportunity, non?" Crane's fists clenched, his voice a growl. "You're grasping at straws, Poirot. I was at the bar. Ask anyone." Poirot's smile was triumphant. "And yet, monsieur, you left a trace, a cufflink engraved with your initials, found near Sir Reginald's seat. A careless mistake for a man so precise in his vengeance." The auditorium gasped, and Crane's face contorted with rage. "You can't prove it was mine. This is nonsense." Poirot stepped forward, holding up a small, glinting object, a cufflink, its silver surface etched with VC. "The little gray cells, they do not err. This was found by the diligent Inspector Japp, and it places you at the scene. You took the dagger from Mademoiselle Beaumont's room, knowing its theatrical origins would cast suspicion on the theater's players. You waited for the interval's chaos, slipped into the stalls, and struck Sir Reginald, settling your score in a moment of darkness." Crane lunged forward, but Japp and 2 constables were upon him, pinning his arms. "You've got nothing," Crane roared, but his defiance faltered as the cuffs snapped shut. Poirot turned to the others, his voice calm. The motive was vengeance, but the stage was set to mislead. Each of you had reason to hate Sir Reginald, but only one had the opportunity and the cunning to act. As Crane was led away, the suspects exhaled, their tension breaking like a taut string. Elsie Grey sobbed quietly, while Clara and Lady Margaret exchanged wary glances. Warrender slumped, his handkerchief shredded in his hands. Hastings clapped Poirot on the shoulder. "Brilliant, Poirot. That cufflink. How did you know?" "The little gray cells, Hastings," Poirot said, his eyes twinkling. "They see what others overlook. The theater, it is a mirror of the soul, and in its reflection, the truth is revealed." The spotlight dimmed, and the velvet theater fell silent once more. Its drama concluded under Poirot's unerring gaze. Chapter 8. The curtain falls. The Velvet Theater, its grandeur now muted in the aftermath of revelation, stood bathed in the soft glow of twilight filtering through its tall windows. The auditorium, so recently a stage for Poirot's unmasking of a murderer, was empty save for the faint echo of footsteps and the lingering scent of velvet and wax. Hercule Poirot stood alone at the edge of the stage, his small, immaculate figure silhouetted against the heavy crimson curtains. His hands were clasped behind his back, his head tilted slightly, as if listening to the theater's final whispers. Captain Hastings, ever the faithful companion, lingered near the orchestra pit, his face a mixture of admiration and exhaustion after the dramatic denouement. "Poirot," Hastings said, breaking the silence, You've done it again. Wrapped it up neat as a parcel, but I'll be dashed if I understand how you pieced it all together so quickly." Poirot turned, his green eyes twinkling with a quiet satisfaction. "Mon ami, the little gray cells, they are like the threads of a tapestry. Each clue, the dagger, the cufflink, the shadow seen by Mademoiselle Gray. It is a thread, and when woven together, they form the picture of truth. Victor Crane," he thought to outwit Hercule Poirot, but no one escapes the order of justice. Hastings chuckled, shaking his head. "Still, it's a grim business. Poor Sir Reginald. Say what you will about him, he didn't deserve that dagger in his chest." Poirot's mustache twitched, his expression thoughtful. Deserve, Hastings? Perhaps not. But Sir Reginald, he was a man who sowed discord, debts with Warrender, threats to Mademoiselle Beaumont, indiscretions that wounded Lady Margaret, and promises to young Elsie that carried a shadow of coercion. His actions, they invited vengeance, and Monsieur Crane, he was the hand that delivered it. They walked slowly through the foyer, where the gilded mirrors reflected their figures in a soft golden haze. The theater was quiet now, its staff and patrons dispersed, the police having retreated with Victor Crane in custody. Poirot paused by the grand staircase, his gaze lingering on a portrait of the theater's founder, a stern-faced man whose eyes seemed to guard the secrets of the past. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low. "This theater, it is more than a place of performance. It is a crucible of human passion. Each suspect played their part. Warrender's desperation, Clara's ambition, Lady Margaret's pride, Elsie's fear, yet only Crane allowed his hatred to write the final act." Hastings nodded, his thoughts turning to the suspects. "What about the others? Will they face any consequences?" Poirot shrugged, a delicate gesture. "The law, it concerns itself with the act of murder, and that guilt lies with Crane. But the others, they carry their own burdens. Mademoiselle Gray, she will heal, but her trust, it is scarred. Mademoiselle Beaumont, she will shine on stage, but her heart, it guards its secrets. Lady Margaret, her pride will sustain her, yet she must live with the shadow of her husband's betrayals. And Warrender, his play, it may succeed, but his debts, they will haunt him still." They stepped out into the London night, the air crisp and carrying the faint hum of the city. The West End's lights twinkled like stars, indifferent to the drama that had unfolded within the Velvet Theatre's walls. Poirot adjusted his hat, his movements precise, and hailed a taxi with a graceful wave of his cane. As they settled into the cab, Hastings leaned back, his curiosity unabated. "Poirot, that cufflink, how did you know it was Crane's? And the dagger, tying it to Clara's dressing room? It all came together so neatly." Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his fingers brushing his mustache. "The cufflink, Hastings, it was a detail too personal to be coincidence. Crane's initials, found near the body, suggested a struggle or a moment of carelessness. As for the dagger, its theatrical design pointed to the Velvet Theatre, and Mademoiselle Beaumont's Macbeth role was a connection too precise to ignore. The shadow seen by Elsie Gray, it confirmed a figure moving with purpose in the darkness. From these, the little gray cells constructed the truth. Crane, driven by vengeance, seized the opportunity to strike and shift suspicion to the theater's players. The taxi rolled through the streets, passing glowing marquees and bustling crowds. Poirot gazed out the window, his expression serene yet tinged with melancholy. "The theater, mon ami, It is a mirror of life. It shows us the masks we wear, the roles we play. But in the end, the truth, it demands the curtain fall. Hastings nodded, his admiration for his friend undimmed. "You're a marvel, Poirot. I don't know how you do it." Poirot chuckled softly. "It is not magic, Hastings. It is method, observation, and the relentless pursuit of order. The world, it is full of chaos, but Hercule Poirot, he restores the balance." As the taxi turned toward Baker Street, the Velvet Theater faded into the night, its secrets laid bare. The drama was over, the murderer unmasked, and the stage was set for the next mystery to unfold in Poirot's inexorable quest for truth.